Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Many of you have been emailing me that you listen to these at different points of the day. So, whenever you're listening to this, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, welcome to you and thank you for being here today. We are up to Psalm 18, and Psalm 18, you will immediately see, is a really, really long psalm. And so, you are welcome to read the whole psalm if you so desire. But I'm not going to read the whole psalm for us today. I'm going to read verses 1 through 6, and then I'm going to read verses 16 through 19. So I invite you to hear the word of the Lord from parts of Psalm 18, where David says, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. He is my shield and the stronghold of my salvation. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of my praise, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me, the cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord. I cried to God for help. From his temple he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. Verse 16. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Perhaps one of the most common images that we see in the Psalms is this image that we get right away in multiple ways and multiple times. This image that God is a refuge, a safe place, a place where you go when things are not right, when you're in trouble. David in particular uses this image a lot. And I find that people today, many of their favorite psalms, many of your favorite psalms, have this image of God as a refuge. And it often strikes me that we as human beings, but also we as Americans, we can be so independent so much of the time. We want to do things on our own. We like the confidence of accomplishing something. We want to know that we are capable. We love completing tasks. But when we are in trouble, we want to feel safe. We want to feel like there is something bigger than us and stronger than us that is on our side. We want to know that we are not alone. And in this psalm, this profession that God is David's rock, his fortress, his refuge, his deliverer, it's all part of this great psalm of thanksgiving where David praises God for the ways that he's provided, for the ways that he's delivered him. And you may remember that in some of the Psalms that we've looked at so far, David calls God his refuge for other reasons and in other circumstances. And you might also remember that David does so even though God hasn't done anything yet. So we're seeing in the Psalms and from David a persistence in running to God. And of course, we've spoken before about how David is the guy who killed the giant Goliath, the guy who God handpicked from all of his older brothers, the mighty warrior. And David opens up with those tender, vulnerable words. I love you, Lord. You are my strength. And you can hear in David's words that there's an intimacy and a richness to his faith. He knows that God is close to him. And he believes that no matter what happens, that God will be his refuge. And so he's so thankful that God is on his side. Doesn't mean that David is never afraid. Doesn't mean that he never sins. Doesn't mean that he never doubts. But it's clear through the Psalms so far that David has this persistence in running to God whenever difficult things come and praising him when he acts. This is one of the reasons I'm so thankful for all of you that have tuned into these videos so frequently over these last several weeks. Because it's valuable and meaningful for me to know that many of you have this instinct in the midst of what we're going through to run to God, to find comfort in the fact that he is with us, to run to his word, to be reminded that we are not alone, and to come to God because he is our refuge. And I do want to ask us today, reading what David says here right at the beginning of the psalm, how often do we tell God, I love you, Lord? So today in your prayers at home, I invite you to do what David does. Tell the Lord how much you love him. Tell him how much you need him. Tell him how much you cherish having him as your refuge and your rock and your strength. Praise him for the mighty things that he has done in your life, and praise him for the reality that he delights in you. People of God, may the Lord be with you.